Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Bola Akintenuwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Chike Ogia, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Mark Foley Hospitality Limited. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Well, you know, gentlemen and Yemi, we just had the Inec Commissioner for Nigeria in charge of publicity and voter education with us, talking about the Electoral Act 2022 and the provisions, the guidelines therein, the opportunities, the challenges that may be faced, and some of the concerns that have been expressed by stakeholders in this regard. He sounded essentially optimistic, and he says that INEC is ready. But we have the Chief Executive of Enough is Enough here, Yemi Adamolekun, who has been monitoring the democratic process from all fronts actively. Yemi, what do you make of some of the submissions by Dr. Festus Okoye?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I mean, the starting point is, as we talked about last week, it was good that Mr. President signed the Electoral Act. So we have a new act that the 2023 elections will be run by. Even Ekiti and Osun this year, even though part of the process, i.e. their primaries, were under the previous act, but the election itself would be under the new act. We have new dates moved forward by a week. And there are concerns, I mean, I think within the context, major concerns that have shown up within the last 1 month, for example, was the by-elections and then the FCT elections. So it was interesting to see that there were no widely reported cases of BVAS not working at the by-elections, whereas during the FCT elections there were. INEC's job is to sound optimistic. INEC's job is to project that they're in charge, things are working, they're on top of things. But the main things that still continue to be issues that people are concerned about as we move towards the elections are the issue of technology. Technology is a tool that's managed and run by human beings. And so from within INEC and within ad hoc staff, I mean, for example, ad hoc staff that they had at the FCT were a big part of the challenge. Some ad hoc staff didn't show up. They had to bring in new ad hoc staff that weren't very familiar with the technology. So if you have a piece of technology that you're not familiar with, even just turning it on might be a challenge, and you're saying that it's not working when it's that you didn't turn it on. But for the by-elections that were held, I believe 2 weeks ago, we didn't have those types of issues. And then secondly, logistics. INEC always has, let me not say always, has perennially had issues with logistics, where contracts are signed with transportation owners and they suddenly decide the morning of that they're not going, or for whatever reason they've been told that if they go, their vehicles will be damaged. I'm not quite sure INEC has honestly figured out a solution to that, and that needs to be thought through what else can be done. Because obviously, and the solution is not for INEC to buy buses, because that doesn't make any sense. But the solution then is within a system, and I think we need to also be fair to INEC in the sense that they're being asked to provide infrastructure that normally would occur. I was talking with a colleague of mine yesterday, and she was saying that she was interviewing some previous electoral officers who would leave their houses in the morning, go to the polling unit, be done, and then go back home. But unfortunately, because for security reasons, INEC now has to set up this rack centers where coppers are kept overnight, so it's easy to move them to polling units because we shut down the whole country to have elections. So those are the types of things that INEC is forced to. And so when you set up a school as a rack, INEC then has to provide water, has to provide light, has to provide mattresses. That obviously is not in their brief. They're supposed to manage elections. But unfortunately, to manage elections in Nigeria, that's what you have to do. So those are challenges that they do have. And I think just the constant rethinking, how do we do this better? How can we do this better? How do we engage? How do we get people to understand that it's not about INEC, but it's about Nigeria? But when political parties make it do or die, it gets really very difficult because everybody, I mean, not everybody, as long as people are affiliated with a political party, even from just a membership perspective, once we carry that into the fact that INEC cannot be an establishment where nobody in INEC is affiliated with a political party, it would really make no sense to run a country like that. So it's not just INEC, it's also us as citizens holding ourselves accountable in that regard.
Well, Yemi, just before I come back to the studio here in Lagos, there was this issue about independent candidacy that I was trying to drag with Dr. Festus Okoye. If you could help us shed a little more light on that, because he wasn't quite certain that that is a possibility for the 2023 general elections.
He's not certain because we don't have the law yet. So the National Assembly has passed it as part of the ongoing constitutional amendment. But as you know, they passed it in Abuja, then it has to go to states, and 24 states have to support it. Then Mr. President has to assent to it to make it a part of Nigeria's constitution. Until then, will INEC be able to then operationalize, as Mr. Okoye said, operationalize the constitution as part of their own operating procedure. But I dare say if primaries have to end by June, even though it's not a political party, I'm guessing for an independent candidate, that would also kind of mean that you need to be a candidate on your own by June. I doubt it's going to be possible for the 2023 elections.
Thank you. That's really fine. Chike, your take on some of the points by Dr. Okoye.
Well, what I can see from listening to Dr. Okoye, you know, the first thing I realized about this is that our profession is a very versatile profession, because to do that work he's doing, you have to be a lawyer, so to speak. The major areas I see as maybe a little bit troublesome, again, will come back to the law. Just like what Yemi has just said in her last submission, are we looking at the Electoral Act in isolation now, that has been, the president's signature has been appended to as a law already? Or are we saying we have to wait for the processes to be complete, for the amendment of the Constitution to be done, before we can now say we have a law? So those are the things, you know, and basically all we're trying to do with these things are to make sure we reduce the number of litigations and all of that. So the jury is out on that, and we'll see how that goes, because if we have to wait, just like Yemi said, then a lot of those things we look forward in 2023 will definitely not be able to be operationalized, stuff like the independent candidacy, because you'll be out of time with the kind of time frame around most of those provisions. But for me, I want to look at the, you know, generality of the challenges I see going forward. This issue of logistics Yemi talked about, it's something I'm very aware, and I want to use my own experience when, you know, I was a commissioner in Delta State. You see, we have a lot of riverine areas in Delta State, you know, and I'm sure in certain areas in Ondo as well, and most of these Niger Delta states. And accessing these would-be voters can be a real challenge. In fact, a lot of times we have to delay announcement of results. The commission has to be delayed because these votes that are being expected from areas that are deep into the waters are not out yet. Now, with the kind of logistics we are talking about there, this is a totally different type. We are talking about boats and all of that kind of thing. So I don't know whether there are provisions, like we are rightfully saying, if the law says INEC should be funded 1 year before, and the director was saying that no, hopefully it will come, not realizing that anything that comes now is already late vis-a-vis the law. So you see, these are the kind of issues we're looking at. We're also looking at, like, the area he talked about of persons with disabilities. Now he says, I heard him say something like, we talk to different stakeholders, you know, the albinos, the different stakeholders in the disability, you know, side of things, and we want to get ready for those areas. No, it's not isolated. You have different kinds of disabilities everywhere. So you have to be ready for everything across the spectrum. In every ward, I'm sure there will be a blind person, there will be someone that, you know, maybe he has challenges with his limbs or his hands or something. So we have to be ready for everything. So I saw that as well. Then I also saw the situation of the 1 year, like I said, that the Act talks about for things to be in place. We're already out of time for that, so I don't know how we're going to handle that as well. But all in all, we are treading on new grounds. We thank God that, like he said, the violence will leave the coalition centers now because there's no need. From the polling booths, the results have gone. So, you know, that I think is the highlight of this amendment. Yes, that, you know, to help with that. But we are praying that we have less glitches with the technology, especially in remote areas where there can be a problem with Wi-Fi and all of that. So those are the kind of challenges that they still have to work around.
Okay, we'll see. Let's hope that the coalition centers will truly no longer be problematic.
Yes.
Professor Akinterawa.
I think the coalition centers telling us that it will no longer be problematic is simply shifting the venue of the problem to another place. What Okoye told us, if I heard him well, is that the problem will no longer be at the coalition center, but it will be at the polling center. Meaning now that the problem actually is not the issue of electronic factors, you know, transmission of results by electronic means, but the people, because he did tell us that the politicians themselves now will now have to carry the battle to the polling station. Now, there are two critical issues raised by Reuben. He raised the nexus between the Constitution and the 2022 electoral law. He in fact asked him whether the 2022 electoral law is not a violation of the Constitution. And Okoye, and I will agree with him, tried to argue that, look, the 2022 electoral law is a resultant from the Constitution. That in this case, it is not that the 2022 electoral law is a negation. No, it does not violate. And he tries to indirectly explain the principle, the legal principle of lex posteriori, deroga lex anteriori. That is the law that existed already in itself has now been overtaken by the new law. So he didn't create any differentiation, that is still consistent. And as to the point, good observation also raised by Reuben, is not trying to say that, look, when he's saying that the provisions of the Constitution, should they be taken separately all along? Reuben argued rightly that it should be conjunctively considered.
That's right.
And the explanation he gave through is to say, well, look, here is still the same principle of indivisibility of law. So, on both sides, I think Okoye, to a great extent, has tried to manage the crisis, especially when he talks about funding. When the funding itself, the provision says, look, within 365 days, you are supposed to have given, funded the project.
Yes.
And now he came back again, Okoye came back again to draw attention to the fact that, well, for as long as the Constitution remains non-reviewed, it will be difficult, you know, not to say that he didn't want to say that there's real violation. Actually, it's an infraction of the Constitution. The mere fact that, look, the Constitution provides, stipulates for 365 something. So in essence, I think that the critical problem to address, far from what we have discussed, is the issue of registration and participation. You know, registration with participation, registration without participation. What is happening now is that, look, is what the French, I normally refer to it, call magouille. Magui, you see, the Yoruba people will call it Wuru. It's still the same thing. The INEC, the government, does not want, you know, all these issue of independent candidature, new political parties to be registered. I think they simply do not want that, because in between 2019 and February 14, 2021, there were already 101 application forms for registration. Now we only have 18. What has happened to those applications? We are not told. And at the end of the day, I think that, well, it is so far so good. The only thing there is that, look, you cannot provide for independent candidature on the one hand without necessarily amending the Constitution, because the Constitution specifically provides that political parties are the only one to present candidates
on an election. Okay, on that note, let's bring in Professor David Awurawa. Professor Awurawa, your take on the Electoral Act 2022 and the processes and the issues discussed by Dr. Festus Okoye earlier on this program.
Thank you very much. We are happy that the Electoral Act now exists. The 2022 Act now exists. The President hasn't signed it. It is something that makes us happy. We have, in the past couple of weeks and months, highlighted the new provisions and the impact that the provisions will have, on the elections. Very positive provisions, such as the electronic transmission of results and all that. Those are, things that we expect to revolutionize our elections, so to speak, because it will reduce to the barest minimum the prospect for changing results and, bringing in individuals who were not voted for to office. But regarding the specifics, there's a whole lot that, still needs to be done. Yemi pointed to many of those issues which are valid. The issues of intimidation will remain. The issues of, the staff, the INEC staff, how much do they know about operating these devices? All of those things are still there. INEC will need to address those ones. They will also need to address honesty among INEC staff. I was, presiding officer in the last election, 2019, presidential, governor, and all that, the governorship election. And I know what I'm saying. So, in addition to getting INEC staff to be more proficient in handling the equipment required for election, there is also the need to address honesty among INEC staff. Our people too need to be educated, to know that the election should not be a do or die. I was at the collation center in 2019 that was to be burned down by supporters of a particular group. We had to be taken at night at 2:30 a.m. from that, collation center to INEC office in Yaba. All of these issues are still there that will need to be addressed. But taken together, we expect that the Electoral Act, the 2022 Electoral Act, will enhance, our election, will make it more transparent, would make us, emerge with individuals that the people really want, and that the people can reject if they don't do well, moving forward. All of these are positive things, as far as the Electoral Act is concerned. Regarding the issue of whether non-registering political parties is at variance with certain sections of the 1999 Constitution, I don't think so. Freedom of association is there, provided for, but then there are also provisions specifically for political parties being, the only groups that can present individuals for election, which, and of course, there are not specifics regarding it, that it must be 1 year, to election. So maybe another election 2023, but not for 2023 election. But taken together, we expect that the new act will, affect our elections positively and enhance transparency in the conduct of elections.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Awurawa. But Chike, it's like you have something to add to what you have said.
I was just listening to what Prof said, and for me, the sticky point, and I was trying to, both the two profs and Yemi have spoken to it, and I'm still a little bit unclear, is this issue of independent candidacy. Do we have to wait for the whole action to be complete? As we say in law, it is still inchoate until the processes are completed in the state houses of assembly and the constitution is actually changed by the amendment, or the fact that it has now been written in the electoral law. Can we say, okay, depending on how you want to interpret it, that we can still use it for these elections?
No,
Yemi's point,
Yes.
sorry, Prof, is that, look, out of the 68 clauses meant for constitutional amendment, which is the superior law, 46 were approved. But these 46 clauses that were approved, we still have to go to the 36 houses of assembly, as you know.
That's right.
So our concern is that if that particular clause 58 goes to the 46 houses of assembly, with the governors having their own influence over those state houses of assembly, the thing may come back.
No, I don't even want to second guess what will happen there.
Okay.
Because I don't see how independent candidacy affects any governor anyway, because many of them tomorrow might even want to benefit from that.
Okay.
They will have a lot of money, they won't know what to do with it, and they might not have the fought with everybody in their party. The way it goes. So they might need to first get a pedestal to stand upon. So I don't think so. I'm just looking purely at the legal aspect of it.
The legal aspect,
Yes.
to which you are drawing your attention, is basically the fact that the Constitution that stipulates that political parties are the only, vehicles
Yes.
for
political participation.
For political participation. And that's why I raised the issue
Yes.
of registration with participation and registration without participation. The issue of independent candidature, as you rightly pointed out,
Yes.
has nothing to do with all these things. The new law provides for independent candidature. The issue now is that going through the state processes, all right, because we cannot take away independent candidature out of the whole, not something.
46.
Everything must be holistically together. You use the word conjunctively, and I took note of that. You are right. So the issue now is what will happen at the level of having 24 state assemblies giving consent to it. That is where we are.
24 will be 2/3
That's right.
of the majority as required by the Constitution. But let's move on. Let's take another subject. Another group of 180 Nigerians who were evacuated due to the war in Ukraine arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, at 11:24 p.m. on Friday night. Our correspondent, Amaka Ude, captured the joyous moments of reunion with their families. Here is the report.
Tears, excitement, and relief to be back home. Well, these are part of the over 5,000 Nigerians which the authorities say are qualified to be evacuated and reunited with their families. The Air Peace aircraft is the second to arrive, the first from Poland and this from Budapest in Hungary. They share their harrowing experience.
Bombs bumping and so loud, black smoke coming up and loud in the night, 3 to 4 a.m. many bombs bumping and it's so loud and it was so loud. So and in our area where the president actually lives, so it's the place that they want to attack, Russia want to attack, and we live here. And so in the night they bombs to bomb 2 to 4 o'clock, and people always go to the shops in the morning. We do not think it would take as long as it take 2 days, and we were all so tired in the entire bus, and the bus was queued because there was a lot of people.
We suffered. We are traveling by road for 3 days, since Saturday up to Monday, or Tuesday, day and night, with hunger, no stress, hungry, no sleep.
From Ukraine, Kharkov. From there, I took the train. It was a lot of people, definitely a lot of people, trying to, move from here to Uzhhorod. But I was not going to Uzhhorod. I was going to Lviv. And, all the way from Lviv, we had to, because I was with other group of people, we had to look for a train that was going to Uzhhorod or Poland, but they said that they could not. That Poland is not accepting black people. Before I left, Ukraine, Kharkov, there were a lot of bombing sounds near my residence, so that's why I had to pack up and start leaving.
Ukraine, which has become a choice destination for students from all over the world, has an estimated 20,000 international students, 4,000 of which are Nigerians. And for some of the students, they want the war to be over soon enough so they can go back and complete their studies.
I'm in my 3rd year, preparing for my first medical exam. So my first medical exam is in 3 months' time. So my medical career is at stake right now. So there's not, okay, I won't say there's nothing in Nigeria can harm, but if I'm staying here, what next? There's a lot of ASO strike, and it is what it is, man. I just have to go back if everything is over.
I'm in my final year, so I have to go get my degree. So I hope this stuff gets over within a month or more. Even if it takes 3 months, which I hope it won't.
We would wait to see what the war will be, the outcome of the war, but with the look of things, it might stop at any moment. But if it doesn't, we still have to wait. We have our papers, and I believe that the country Ukraine will understand that we as students, we went away for our dear lives, and maybe whenever we want to come back to finish our studies, I think they have something to do so that we can be able to come back.
There is a lot of cold in Ukraine, and since the crisis started, we haven't rested for over 7 days now, and we haven't taken our baths normally. So I'm thinking that once the war ends, I'm going to go back to finish my study.
Air Peace and Max Airlines were contracted to evacuate Nigerians, with the country expected to spend $8.5 million on the exercise. Here at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, well, the second aircraft has just touched down at about 11:25 p.m. Nigerian time. And as you can look around us, most of them are students who are traumatized, some of them scared and really hungry, but most importantly, excited to be back home in the motherland of Nigeria, because some of the experiences that they have shared with us on and off camera can just give you a picture of what is really happening in Ukraine. All of them have one thing in common: the harrowing experience moving from Ukraine to Hungary, which is where they eventually got airlifted back home to the motherland. But as we have been told by the authorities, so far, about 320 Nigerians have landed right here in Abuja. But one thing is for sure, most of these students will tell you that if the educational system here in Nigeria was better, they would not have to seek those educational pursuits that they had to in Ukraine. But as you can see, everyone has got to go through a PCR test to ensure that they are COVID-free before they are reunited with their loved ones here in the country. At the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, I'm Amaka Ude, Arise News.
Well, brilliant report there by Amaka Ude on the evacuees from Europe, affected by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And the report raises most of the relevant issues. But there are one or two other issues. The racism. that they encountered. Good account was given about the anguish. Second, there was also a good account in terms of some of them don't want to come back home because, they have misgivings about the education system in Nigeria. Some of them are at the end of their, courses of study. And then, of course, what also needs to be noted is the fact that there are so many that are still stranded there. The students in Sumy and in that Moripol axis, where the Russians have refused, despite the promise to declare a ceasefire, only for them to start bombing again within 2 hours, and they've refused to create that humanitarian corridor. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria has already spoken to some foreign ministers, trying to see how a humanitarian corridor can be created to allow Nigerians that are street stranded to be able to move out, even if they're going to stay in Europe. So what I see in the course of the week, in the last 5 days, is that whereas the Nigerian government did not respond quickly enough, but so much has been done, and the president had approved money, and we've seen, the country suddenly waking up and, making an effort to engage in citizen diplomacy. But it's not over yet until those other stranded persons in, the war zones in Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine particularly, are ferried to safety. But Professor Akintenora, let me start with you and Professor Awurawa, because this is right down your alley. You go first, Professor Akintenora.
First of all, I think to a limited extent, we should commend the efforts of the federal government of Nigeria. It is a source of happiness to be told that $100 is given to every returnee. It is good news too that the government approved $8.5 million for the transportation.
billion naira in naira terms, yes.
Yes, in naira terms, well, it's also a big, it's a lot of money for the repatriation, for the evacuation of about 5,000 eligible Nigerians, as we are told. I also look at the fact that the federal government has already initiated, reportedly, talks with some countries to consider the possibility of the Nigerian students who are in their final year, particularly the medical students, to have the opportunity of quickly completing their studies. And I also appreciate the fact that the government decided to breach its own rule of, COVID-19 protocol. Normally, when you are a returnee, you are supposed to be taken to isolation center, and we verify that you are not COVID-19 infected. That is when living there. But they shifted it to time of arrival in Nigeria. I commend all these efforts, even though the policy of government in itself, like Ruben rightly pointed out earlier, it was unnecessarily delayed. So we didn't act on time. But I think that what the federal government of Nigeria should actually do is to go beyond giving $100. It doesn't solve any problem. $100, according to the rate used, is just 48,000 naira, just to assist them. We appreciate that, well, they have evacuated them, but that is still a major responsibility of the federal government of Nigeria, safety and security of all Nigerians. But they need to go back and negotiate with the governments of Romania, Bulgaria, and including Poland, which was friendly in the beginning before turning to becoming hostile. Discuss with them. It is not just the medical students. all Nigerian students in their final year, okay, they should negotiate for them. Their fear is that, look, if they return to Nigeria, ASU strike is there. They pointed to it. So going back again can be very problematic. Who is going to pay again for their return journey? Is the parents. They wouldn't have all that money. Those who are on scholarship, probably the sponsors will be able to do that. I think that it will be good for government to quickly sustain negotiation with them, expand the students that should be covered, and then they should also discuss with those governments the possibility of a sort of mini entente cordiale, an understanding to enable the students to stay there too. If, for whatever reason, the war may not quickly come to an end, well, they should find institutions for them there if they want to stay. They can also work. You see, you work. The Nigerians are there as a result of force majeure. They are not terrorists. Okay? They are not people who are seeking to become landed immigrants. No, it's because they have been pushed as a result of the
war situation.
Yeah, war situation. So they should show understanding in such a way that rather than bringing all these students there, and I can assure you, if we are supposed to bet, these Nigerians, if they are in Poland, if they are in Slovenia, in all these countries, they will become assets to them. Definitely. Even if they are working as students in different places, the Nigerians are generally very productive, very vibrant. They are never tired.
Okay, Prof.
So I think that...
Chike.
Well, the greatest shock in all of this for me was that I didn't realize that so many of our children were in those countries. That was the first shock for me.
There are many.
Yes, I thought that our children were mainly in America, Canada, United Kingdom, I know a few study medicine in places like Prague, because my daughter had a classmate who finished medicine there. I was surprised there. But this has just showed how much the world has changed since I went to school. Because I'm sure there were not many. God, there are not many.
Decades
I'm
ago.
wondering where all these Nigerians are coming, our children out there in Ukraine. This is crazy.
No, it's a famous destination for people studying medicine.
So I can see, but more importantly, the lessons we've learned here was that we now realize that we don't have blue eyes. We are not civilized. So when they saw those images of bombs being dropped in those places, they felt that, wow, this is not a third world country. This is not a banana republic. What is happening here? This is Europe. Wow. So that was a wake-up call for them, though. And it is good for our children also to also see that most likely when they finish whatever they went to do there, they should just come back home. Because it must be a shock therapy to them to wake up and realize that this place they call home, that they thought, they were receiving good education and all that there was such institutional racism, undercurrents pervading the place. How can you be turning people back from trains? You say because they are black, so they should go and die. Meanwhile, your own nationals are being allowed to go. You are the ones that have the issue. But that is why I said, why don't we stay at home?
They should
at least
remember
nothing is happening in Lagos. We are happy in Lagos here.
They should remember James Brown saying, say it loud. I am black, I'm proud.
Well, then, sorry, just before I leave, I think the other aspect I want to talk about is that we can go, the government or, and also parents that have these children here can also talk to the private universities in Nigeria, especially for the ones in their final year. That we have good private universities here now because, like you said, ASU strike and all of that.
Well, I get your point, but let me go straight now to Professor David Awurawa. Professor Awurawa, your take on the evacuation of Nigerians stranded in Europe?
Yeah, I want to begin by commending the federal government for, all they have done in the last couple of days to get Nigerians stranded in Europe back to the country. It is commendable. Well, we didn't start early enough, but when they started, things moved at expeditious speed, and that is gratifying. We are very happy that those young lads are back home, safe, and that arrangements are being made to assist them in other ways, and that is where my focus is. They have arrived now, and what needs to be done is for the government to negotiate more. They already pointed out that they are trying to negotiate with some countries, the government of some countries in Poland, Romania, and some other countries in Eastern Europe, with the possibility of they are returning to these countries that are not at war, so they can complete their program. It should not just be a matter they just talk about, for the public consumption and then it ends there. It should be something they will pursue vigorously, because the war in Ukraine, we don't know how long it will last. And we don't know how long it will take for stability to be restored there. And so making some of the arrangements for these young ones to be able to complete their education is what should be pursued. And just like
Okay, we seem to have lost connection with Professor Awurawa there. But Yemi Adamalekum, before I bring you in, let's take this report, still on the same subject. As Nigerian evacuees spend their first day back in Nigeria, there's a group of returnees hoping to follow them back. But there are also Nigerian refugees who say they are not returning and would rather face the uncertainty of waiting for the war in Ukraine to end. Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akisanya has spoken to two such students in Poland who have no intention of returning to Nigeria yet and instead are planning to seek refuge in Europe. Here is a report by Adefemi Akisanya.
The view from their window doesn't show much, a few buildings, an empty street, and parked cars. But for Williams Ikechukwu and Victory Eke, Nigerian students who fled the war in Ukraine, the view is their window to peace. They've been staying at a hotel in Warsaw, but they're running out of money. The day after watching Nigerian evacuees reunite with their families in Abuja, I asked how they felt about the effort. When we heard about the evacuation planes coming in via Nigeria through Air Peace and the Nigerian embassy here in Poland, there was a big rush of people who wanted to get on those planes and evacuate out. Were you ever supposed to be on those planes? Did you want to go? What is your plan?
I am not going to be part of it. I never actually thought of going with them. So my plan is to stay here in Poland or move to another country because I want to go back to Ukraine. I am a 50 medical student, so going back to Nigeria is in fact I can't even talk about that. So I decided I said no, I'm not going to go. So we are all praying for the best, for the conflict between the two nations to end, so that we can actually return back to Ukraine. Because first of all, studying for 5 years since 2017 is not something that I would just want to let go. It's 5 years of my life studying medicine. So we are praying that the war is going to end so that we can return back home. But for the meantime, we are still here in Poland and hoping that everything will be will come back to everything will normalize so that we can just return back home and continue our studies.
Well, I think it's much more easy, better for me to wait it out, at least for the meantime. But I'm just planning to maybe check and wait around maybe a week or two, just to know if the war ends up subsiding. But if the war doesn't stop, I think maybe I might just have to go back to Nigeria. I don't know about that yet, but we're all praying that the war just ends, that there will be a ceasefire, because we all just want to go back to our school, just to continue our normal lives. Nobody wants to be running around in Poland. Sometimes it's just as if they don't really want you there. So nobody wants to feel that. Everyone wants to go back to Ukraine and feel at home.
If you don't want to return to Nigeria and it's your intention to wait out what's happening, what will you do? Where will you go?
We are planning to move to Germany if they were coming the Ukrainian the student from Ukraine. We're also planning to move to Germany to see if we can actually minimize or cut the cost of living like getting assistance from like maybe some NGO firms and or some relative or something like that. So
it's important to note that Williams and Victory do not speak for all of the Nigerian students who fled the war. Many of them who remain under the supervision of the Nigerian embassy here in Poland are still hopeful that another evacuation flight will be announced soon. But for Williams, Victory, and the rest of their 8-member group, they'll continue searching for a way out before making their way back in to Ukraine, no matter how long it takes. Adefemi Akinsanya, Arise News, Warsaw.
Well, now time to bring Yemi Adamalekun into the conversation. Some Nigerians have been evacuated, but you also had to listen to these two gentlemen saying that they don't want to leave Ukraine. But, you know, what do you think of what government has done so far after the initial hiccups that we had?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. When we were talking about political parties with Inec, this new act actually does something very nice and says, I think Professor Akintarenwa mentioned that people apply and get no response. This new act actually penalizes Inec for that. So if you apply and Inec doesn't get back to you or give you a reason, you are considered automatically registered, which is actually quite good. Now on Ukraine, I'm not quite sure that we should be surprised that Nigerian students don't want to come back. The gentleman said he was a 5th-year student, and basically wants to wait it out. But I think they also underestimate the impact of war. So I think they're thinking that once the shooting stops, everything will return to normal and we can quickly go back and school will continue as we left it. I think that's a bit naive in terms of the impact of war, what might happen or not happen in the times that we have. But I think them not wanting to come back and then willing literally to hop from country to country until they find a safe space and wait out rather than coming back to Nigeria, it says a lot, and it's a huge indictment on the way we've treated our citizens, that, as we keep saying, why they need to go abroad to get education. I like Mr. Ogier's point around private universities, that's not even a consideration for a final year student to come back and complete their education, is also very instructive. The second point that I find also very interesting is our response to racism. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, in a lot of ways, Africans tend not to, especially non-South African Africans, tend to be taken a bit aback by racism because it's just not our context. You're used to seeing black people and that direct experience, you don't have it. Now, when you're also in school, because it's an academic institution, most students don't face it as a day-to-day occurrence. Maybe when you go out to the shops, you might see it a bit, but because it's just a bit of your existence, you shrug it off and you continue living. But in a situation where it's now life or death, and your ability to cross a border is now based on your skin, I think dealing with that in sort of in very stark terms is a shock to the system. But it's also a reminder that until we are ready to develop ourselves and get our countries and our citizens in sort of pride of place, that's what we will feel. But then the comparison between how people can be willing to collect your money but not like you as a person because of the way you look. And I think that's instructive because in the US, it's one of the things that African Americans keep talking about in the context of racism, that economic boycotts, that if black people withhold their purchasing power, that it will communicate just how much they contribute to the American economy. So it's a constant dynamic of economic power and people not liking what you look like. And then lastly, the point on accountability. It was shared that President Buhari has approved the release of $8.5 million for evacuating Nigerians. And people responded to a tweet by Air Peace that postured as if Air Peace was going on a humanitarian mission. And people were kind of commending Air Peace for really being pro-Nigeria and really going out of their way. But as you said in the report, it was a chartered flight. So I think this goes back to these issues of accountability. $8.5 million released. Some companies chartered to bring Nigerians back. Nigerians being given $100, as Professor Akintemi said, 50,000 naira at the airport when they arrive. But then what else is the money going to be used for? What we've seen online in very many WhatsApp groups is crowdfunding. Nigerians trying to help other Nigerians through difficult situations. So you wonder, if we have $8.5 million, why are Nigerians crowdfunding to help Nigerians? But if we don't know where the money is and how it's been allocated, that will happen.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Let's take another quick break here on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show. When we return, we'll be discussing the National Assembly's consideration of Constitution Amendment bills. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akintenwa, Chike Ogia, Yemi Adamolekun, and Professor David Awurawo. Let's take our next subject. The Senate has approved financial and administrative autonomy for local governments in Nigeria. The approval was given during a clause-by-clause consideration of some sections of the 1999 Constitution, which is being amended. Ehosai Igumbo reports. Here is the report.
The committee articulated the review agenda around certain thematic areas, including gender equity, federalism and devolution of powers, local government autonomy, public revenue, fiscal federalism, revenue allocation, social, economic and cultural rights, and strengthening the independence of oversight institutions created by the Constitution in line with the bills referred to us.
Granting complete autonomy to local governments is part of a major push to improve development at the grassroots. This has been a major challenge for the third-tier government, partly because of poor funding and the overbearing attitude of state governors. The bill was passed along with over 40 others, themed along 4 key areas, including independence for the state houses of assembly and judiciary, reforms in the judicial sector, national security and electoral matters. An approval was given for financial independence for state houses of assembly and the judiciary to set them free from the control of their state governors. The Senate passed the bill for independent candidacy during elections, but it was quick to reject attempts to stop defections from political parties. Presiding officers of the legislature were voted to become members of the National Security Council. The powers to summon the president and governors by lawmakers was also approved. The Senate also passed the bill to separate the office of the Attorney General of the Federation from the Minister of Justice. Votes, however, did not pull through for bills to override the president's veto, both for constitutional amendments and other executive bills. Voting for Nigerians in the diaspora also failed. The Senate also rejected a bill seeking to move value-added tax to the exclusive list, a key issue that has been a subject of controversy between states and federal governments. It also rejected calls for revenue courts.
There's some people that wanted, you can talk about VAT or certain things, which maybe some will have, some people may have wished that had passed, but obviously it never did, and just have to respect the rule of the majority.
All gender bills presented failed despite a last-minute campaign by women groups at the National Assembly.
A vote for women is a win for Nigeria. Can anybody deny his mother? No. Can anybody abandon his mother? No. Can anybody deny the special role of women in Nigeria? No. Enough is enough.
In all, 68 clauses were voted for. Now it's expected to be sent to the states, where 2/3 of the vote will be required by the state houses of assembly. Ehosai Igumbo, Arise News.
Meanwhile, women organizations have continued their protests to persuade the National Assembly to revisit gender equality bills. These bills were rejected during the voting on the amendment of Nigeria's 1999 Constitution on Tuesday. The women are asking for special seats for women in parliament, indigenship and citizenship rights, 35% affirmative action, and more appointive positions for women. They are threatening to continue with this protest until the lawmakers grant their demands.
We are not second-class citizens. We are mothers, sisters, friends, even a daughter. Please sign the bill for us, 35%. Please, when you sign it, you sign the future of your children, the future of your brother and your sister, the future of your wives to be, and the nation. Let it be inclusive, please. We want the bill signed.
The actions in the National Assembly have broken our hearts as women, and we are here to stay. We will engage everywhere. If you say you will not hear us now, remember 2023 is there. Until the elections come, we will keep engaging. We will be in your posters. We will be everywhere. We will be at your manifesto presentation. We will remind you what you have done. For us to hand over the offices to you in trust, public offices, we handed it to you as a human being. We expected that you will see us as human beings. How dare you go and forget that women are human?
Well, Yemi Adamolekun, I should come to you quickly on this. 68 bills for amendment, 46 stayed through. Some of those amendments that went through relate to federalism, about railways being taken off the exclusive list, electricity taken off the exclusive list, amendment of the abrogation of the state joint local government account, and quite a number. Regulation of the first session and inauguration of both houses of the assembly. And then, of course, all those attempts to amend the relevant parts of the constitution dealing with women. Either 35% affirmation in terms of representation in political parties, or 35% affirmation in political offices that was adjusted eventually downwards to about 20% in the House of Representatives. Women who have foreign spouses, the expectation was that if their spouses have been here for 5 years, they could become Nigerian citizens. That was also shut down, and that was the basis for the protest by the women. And there is no guarantee that the 46, jointly approved amendments will say through 24 states of the Federation in the Houses of Assembly, representing 2/3 of the Federation, as the Constitution stipulates. Your thoughts, your concerns on all fronts.
Thank you. Let's start with, I think it's good that okay, so on one end are those who believe, and I probably subscribe to that as well, that the constitution, Nigeria's constitution is not ideal. So we need a new constitution. But the point is that in the absence of that, we will amend the one we have so we can live peaceably together. However, it seems that we're legislating literally everything because we don't just want to apply simple common sense to certain things. As far as I understood, I guess, as I was taught, the local government is a third tier of government. So it's technically should be independent as a state. Why we need to amend the constitution to reflect that, as was said in the report, just shows abuse of power. So we're trying to curb abuse of power in many different ways by legislating specific things, which should just be common sense. And another interesting one is Section 84. Section 84.12, and this one now of the Electoral Act, which basically says that if you're an appointee, you should resign before the primaries if you want to contest. And the point is, let's create an even playing field. It makes no sense that you're running as a minister in June, and let's say for the sake of argument, you get the ticket. So you're a minister of the Federal Republic, and then you stay in office until January, the 1 month that the Constitution says. It's unfair to your other candidates who are running with you, but it's also an abuse of state resources. Now, common sense would say that whoever appointed you should tell you to step down. And I think President Obasanjo did that when he was president. So for governors, for Mr. President, the ideal thing would be for them to be able to say, step down if you want to run, so there's an even playing field. But to curb that, we want to legislate it into law, even though there are issues that it's anti-constitution. But that was the reason why there was a need to do that, to ensure that there's an even playing field. But I raise those points just to say that even with the constitutional amendment process, and we look at the gender bills, the Federal Character Act that already tries to speak to equity and even diaspora voting, for example. Somebody was making the point that the law doesn't really say there can't be diaspora voting. We just need to define what we mean by registration venue. So if we turn an embassy into a registration venue, then then people can go to the Embassy of Nigeria abroad to register to vote, for example. But anyway, I think the LG autonomy one is a good one since we want to write it into law. The diaspora voting one is a very painful one because it failed in both houses. But yet we talk about diaspora remittances. I think in 2020, over $17 billion sent in by Nigerians in the diaspora. A little bit over that is expected to be the same amount is expected to be the amount in 2021. So we talk about their money. We celebrate when they send it in. The amount they send in is probably higher or about the same as what we're getting from oil sales. But yet we're denying them the ability to have a say in how Nigeria is run. And then we also know as a country, we celebrate our Nigerians that do really well outside the country. They're celebrated, hailed as Nigerians. Sometimes they get official calls or they get to meet one official or the other. Anthony Joshua came home. That's the first person that came to mind. But we're saying that Anthony has no business talking about Nigeria and Nigeria's politics. And I think that should certainly be reviewed in this process. Then virtual proceedings was one that I also was quite disappointed that it did not pass. COVID has shown that we can do things from different parts of the world. And so can we put it in our laws that virtual court proceedings are allowed? It's done in Kenya, South Africa, I believe Ghana. But again, it did not pass, which is really very unfortunate. And then lastly, the gender bills, which has continued to engage. And the demand of women is really simple. Let's bring these things back. Let's negotiate and come to the table and agree before this constitutional amendment process is concluded. Because this might take another 10 years or 14 years, whatever, to get us to this point. So before this thing ends, let's come back to the table. There were protests last week. I know celebrating International Women's Day from Tuesday, the women are coming back to the National Assembly, and it's a simple demand, bring these bills back and let's vote on it. But look, people tend to focus on the extra seats, and they talk about women should go and fight for them, they shouldn't get any special treatment. You know what? Let me not even argue that. But let's take two issues, citizenship and indigenship. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria basically says, if a Nigerian man marries a white Swiss woman, she automatically becomes a citizen. And I'm using Switzerland because historically they're a neutral country, so hopefully no political intent will be read into my choice of nation. However, if a Nigerian woman marries a white Swiss man, he cannot become a citizen of Nigeria. How else are you showing that we're not equal or we're not equal citizens in this country? And secondly, indigenship. I'm from Ondo State. Let's say I marry a man from Lagos State and I live in Lagos and I want to run for office in Lagos. They will tell me in Lagos, but Lagos is probably not the best example because we have a mixed multitude in Lagos, but let me continue. They will tell me in Lagos that I'm from Ondo State. I should go and run in my state. But I've lived in Lagos now 10, 15 years. Or let me be born in Lagos, for example, but my parents are from Ondo. So the point about indigenship is that if you've been here for 5 years, or I believe married for 5 years, you can take on the indigenship of your husband and then be able to run for office, apply for jobs, and whatever other benefits come with that. The National Assembly voted against that. And it's really quite instructive because it says fundamentally how they see women, who are their mothers, their wives, their sisters. And that is something that we cannot run away from as a country, because a country that continues to relegate 50% of its population cannot hope to develop in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
And this is after the wife of the president came to the National Assembly. Let me end on this, Dr. Abati. The wife of the president came to the National Assembly. The wife of the vice president came to the National Assembly. The wife of the Ondo State governor came to the National Assembly. And kudos, I would say, to the governors of Edo and Kwara, who have also lent their voice to the call.
Okay, my next question, maybe Chike, you should take it. Part of the concern is about affirmative action. The bill, as proposed by Honorable Nkiru Onyejocha from Isukwato Federal Constituency, was asking for 37 additional seats for women in the in the Senate and 74 additional seats in the House of Representatives, and 1 extra seat in every senatorial district reserved for women. But some of the lawmakers argued that that will increase the cost of governance. Do they have a point?
Yes, definitely. And I think what should happen is that they should have those seats based on the numbers that are in the assembly today. So there's no need to increase, like we said, because, you know, we don't want to keep bloating the expenses. We have no money in the country. But amongst the people that are there, the value that is there, they should give those women those seats. I believe in that. Because let's ask ourselves a question. We have done all these things we have done. Men have taken charge of Nigeria. Men have done everything they've been doing. What has been the solution? What is the situation with Nigeria? Well, we've seen an Angela Merkel come to Germany, and we saw what she did. We have Nkonjo Iweala, we have Amina in the UN. You know, these are very cerebral people or persons that can hold their own anywhere. I don't even see gender, and it's funny because we all have wives, we all have daughters, we all have mothers. And I know what these three things are to every man. And that is why I'm amazed that those guys can sit in that assembly. I wonder which kind of men are those and pass this kind of discriminatory laws, as far as I'm concerned, against women. Because they should be encouraged. We know that it cannot be a level playing field, either financially with the kind of culture we have here and even with the whole, rigors that go into electioneering and all that, thuggery and all of that. So I think the more we assimilate our women into our body politic, I think it will even be better for us. Why do we have to keep them away? And just like Yemi said, these issues of citizenship and indigenship does not make sense. How does a woman live with her husband somewhere for how many years, and we see it happen so many times, and you say, go to your own place and go and run? What does that mean? But you are married, most likely that woman will be buried when she dies tomorrow in her husband's place. So these are the kind of things we should start becoming more proactive and, start being innovative and changing in the way we are thinking in the country.
Okay, Professor Awurawa, let me come to you quickly, the constitutional amendment process.
Well, we have also talked about this, a whole lot over the past couple of years. The ideal thing would have been for us to have a constituent assembly and get a new constitution where we, the people, will, feature not just, superficially, but one that actually emanates from we, the people. But we have not been able to do that. So the one we have now is being amended, which is fine. It shows we are making progress. I'm particularly, interested and impressed by progress made on issues like power, issues like they taking away of so many other things from, the exclusive list to now become, what the states also can legislate on, aviation and the rest of them. All of those, are a reflection of what Nigerians want when they talk about, true federalism. Some people have talked about trying to legislate everything, things that, common sense, should actually prevail. Yes, that is what ought to be. But of course, we know there is a wide gap between desirability and feasibility. Given the nature of our people who will contest everything, maybe if these things appear in black and white as they are now, it will be better for us. And of course, that is not at variance with, theories on federalism. The work by Casey Weir and the rest of them are pointed to the fact that in a federal state, the laws, these things should be as clear as possible, no ambiguity, so that there will be no basis for contest on them. So we are happy that progress is being made. But I'm shocked about, some of these provisions presented that have not passed through in the assembly. The one on indigenship, the one on women. It is really shocking that in 2022, things are simple, things that are commonplace in all parts of the world.
Those people
are where they are. It is really, really shocking. We hope that the protest, the proportion of Nigerians to the position of our representative National Assembly on this thing will make us to have a change on all of these issues. Indigenship is, common sense. We are talking about promoting national integration. This is one veritable way to achieve it. And women, it is just commonplace. And the women we're not just saying that just since we say women, you look for the competent woman, the woman, and they are there all over. In the universities now, it's interesting to note that the percentage of first class in the past couple of years across, the disciplines across Nigeria, 70%. So the women are there, the women have arrived. And it is shocking that we are where we are. But there is a point to note. You recall that Senator Lujimi presented a bill on equality, which was, rejected because some people cited cultural reasons. It means that many of our people are still have these things ingrained in their mind of placing women where they ought to be. Which is shocking. Ought to be means that they should not feature in administration, in governance, and the rest of them. Of course, moving forward, we will continue to advocate, we'll continue to push, and ensure that all of these other provisions that will make Nigeria progress, that Parliament has not approved, will be approved.
Thank you, Prof. Well, quickly, Professor Akintenwa, before we take the topic on the conflict in Ukraine.
You see, I do not think that citizenship can be defined or analyzed on the altar of equity. There's nothing like equality when you are talking about citizenship, because the Nigerian Constitution itself at least provides for 4 types of acquisition of citizenship. The most important one is citizenship by blood descent, principle of ius sanguinis. The second one is by dualization, registration,
and by nationalization.
We have naturalization. You have what the women are complaining about, that look, if they are married to a foreign husband, they should be able to acquire that.
Yes.
When you look at the advantages, disadvantages, nationality, citizenship by blood descent, look, you can acquire another foreign nationality, but your own Nigerian something will still remain. But if a foreigner is acquiring Nigeria something, all these things can be taken away from you. So the types of nationality, citizenship, they are not at the same level. So in this case, the bottom line is that, look, if you are married to a foreigner, for instance, and you are given citizenship, what happens when your marriage breaks? And it doesn't happen. In essence, I think that Wike River State Governor, understands, and is most likely to continue to understand Nigeria better than anyone. He has advised the women to go and protest. Protest is the only language that the BM administration understands. You won't get anything straight unless you fight for it. Nobody will give you your right in Nigeria. That's just the basic truth.
Well, Prof, that can be interpreted as incitement. But, that's not what we do on this program. Let's quickly take our final topic. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that Ukrainian statehood is in jeopardy and likened the West sanctions on Russia to declaring war, while a promised ceasefire in the besieged port city of Mariupol collapsed amid scenes of terror. With the Kremlin's rhetoric growing fiercer and a reprieve from fighting dissolving, Russian troops continue to shell encircled cities, and the number of Ukrainians forced from their country grew to 1.4 million. By last night, Russian forces had intensified their shelling of Mariupol while dropping powerful bombs on residential areas of Chernihiv, a city north of Kiev. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with U.S. President Joe Biden earlier. It's understood that defense, security, and finance issues were discussed. Well, Professor Akintenwa, it looks like you'll be the only person to comment on this, but we have just 1 minute to do so.
Well, I cannot but agree with you. What the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, has said is that he's gone to Ukraine for the purposes of demilitarizing and denazifying Ukraine. That is why it continues to pound, to continue to do all this. And Russia says it doesn't believe NATO countries, that they are never sincere. Consequently, the sanctions being taken against Russia are seen as a declaration of war. And in an attempt to prevent being taken unawares, that is why Russia is now continuing to intensify the war. And we only pray to God Almighty that both sides can begin to see reason as to why they should not provoke or push the whole world into a new third world war.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintenwa. Thank you, Chike Ogia. Thank you, Yemi Adamalekun. And thank you very much, Professor David Awurawo. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.